two teams who've had very similar IPL campaigns so far to get us off this Tuesday evening. It'll be Sunrisers Hyderabad against Mumbai Indians. Both teams lost their first two games, have won two on the trot, got some momentum going. How will it pan out? That's the game we're building up to on T20 Timeout. As I say, good evening to Tom, Moody and Matt Roller. It should be an engaging game and lots to build up to it. But before that, there's something else we're doing at the start of this show. Toss and team news coming up for you shortly. But before that, it is the 18th of April. So that means this is exactly 15 years ago. It was on this day that the IPL launched. Launched obviously in the most explosive way possible thanks to one Brendan McCullum. We have with us someone who was there for that inaugural campaign, and Tom Moody. He's been part of so many IPL seasons. So, Tom, we thought let's start this off by seeing how much you remember from all that way back in 2008. Are you set?
I'm set, but yeah, I don't know if I'm prepared.
Well, we'll find out soon. For this part of the show, we'll keep Matt out of it because Matt might have been a tad young when that initial IPL rolled out. So, let's put Tom Moody to the test. How well does Tom Moody remember IPL 2008? True or false questions for you, Tom.
Yeah.
MS Dhoni was the most expensive signing at the 2008 auction.
True.
That is correct. MS Dhoni was signed by Chennai for $1.5 million back then. Question 2. The orange cap was won by an uncapped international.
True.
Who was it?
Sean Marsh.
Yes. From Tom's camp at Punjab, Sean Marsh scored 616 runs in that season. Lakshmipati Balaji took the first hat-trick in the league's history.
I'm going to say true because there's some sort of memory that's telling me that that might be the case.
I'll tell you why that is a distinct memory, because it came against your Punjab boys.
Well, there you go.
It was Chennai against
Still
Punjab.
hurts then.
Balaji was followed by Amit Mishra and Makhaya Antini, who also took
Yep.
hat-tricks in that inaugural campaign. Question 4, Tom. Virat Kohli was the first player to be picked up at the under-19 draft that followed the auction.
True.
That was a banana peel question. It's actually false because Pradeep Sangwan Delhi got the first pick at that draft, and this is part of IPL folklore that Delhi did not go for the Delhi boy who just lifted the under-19 World
What a
Cup.
mistake. Hey?
By you and them back
Yes,
then. Yeah,
exactly.
Delhi,
How
of
could
course,
it
had a
have been so
history.
different? Hey? Neither Delhi or Bangalore have won the tournament.
Yeah, makes sense when you start off like that. Final question. Shane Watson was the player of the final.
That first year, there's every likelihood it was yes, because he dominated IPL cricket.
He did, and he was the player of the tournament, but the player of the final was Yusuf Pathan, who smashed a half-century after having earlier taken 3 for 22. And Rajasthan Royals won that competition, of course, to kickstart the IPL, which began on the 18th of April 2008. 3 out of 5. Solid effort, Tom.
You only give me 3, I got 4, didn't I?
No, you got the Kohli one wrong as well.
Okay, right.
I'll give it, I'd say 3.5.
I passed. That was good enough for me at school.
Now, Matt, speaking of school, Matt might have been in his early school years. Matt, any recollection from 2008?
Very limited, to be honest. I was 10 years old, I would have been. So I'm very much part of the generation that's grown up with this tournament. And I think from an English point of view as well, we've seen how much it's changed over those 15 years. I think thinking back to that first edition, Dimi Mascarenhas was the only England player involved. And for the first probably 7 or 8 seasons of IPL, it was a real sort of a fight within English cricket between control of players, and you had the odd person who would come over to India every year and sort of go on about how good it was. KP is an obvious example, but then Owen Morgan as well. And then the odd player like an Owen Shah or Mascarenhas himself. But then since 2015, it's become a very different approach and attitude, and that's played such a big role really in the revolution of English white ball cricket, to the extent that here we are now with Stokes, Curran, Brook dominating at that auction at the end of last year, and so many English players, key players, pivotal players for their respective franchises.
Yes, so much has changed from that English perspective, Tom. But I want to ask you on the whole, having been part of it from 2008, here we are 15 years later. Give us the then and now. What was it like then? How much has it changed for the good?
It's a massive difference in the quality of the cricket that's being played. I think Obviously, players have understood how to play the game a lot better than what they initially did when they first were introduced to 2020 cricket. The professionalism is just poles apart with regards to how players prepare themselves both physically and mentally and through their nutrition and every aspect of it socially. Back in the early days, it was more about what was happening off the field than what was happening on the field. There was constant, parties associated with sponsors and all sorts of things that you're engaged with either your franchise sponsors or with the league sponsors or even the owners. For them it was, a 2-month-long sort of sporting festival, and all the players were swept up into that. But I think over the first, that sort of carried on for about 5 years, and then after 5 years, suddenly the stakes got a lot higher with regards to the importance of winning, the accountability of winning, and therefore professionalism comes in. And the obvious change to me is the difference between the quality and the depth and the professionalism of the Indian domestic players to where they were back in that very first year to where they are now. There is a significant difference. There's very little difference between a young emerging Tilak Verma with the same version of him in Australia or England or South Africa. They're all the same professionally prepared young talent.
Yes, so much has changed from then. So many trends of the game. T20 was still at such a nascent stage. Today it is the most dissected and discussed format in the game, you would argue. Lots of trends and patterns have changed. One of those trends and patterns, which we've noticed as we hit the 25-game mark of this IPL 2023, is the usage of spin bowling, in particular at the death. Now, Tom, it's something which, back when it started, you almost didn't consider spin at all. It was, people feared the T20 might be the end of spin bowling, at least for that format. Here we are today seeing an increasing use of spinners. Numbers point out that you are seeing more and more use of spin as death bowling options. That's quite an evolution.
Yeah, it is. When the IPL first started, people thought it was the death of spin. And it's had the polar opposite effect, where spin has become so valuable, particularly wrist spin or mystery spin, where someone can spin the ball both ways. And there's no surprise to see spinners also improve their ability to defend an over, because from a bowling standpoint, whether you're bowling fast, medium or spin, you're constantly looking to evolve. You're constantly looking to develop your skill to combat the onslaught of your opponent, because batters are getting stronger, they're getting more tricks as well up their sleeves. They're becoming more of a 360 player where previously they may have only been leg side dominant or offside dominant. They're becoming more complete. So you from a bowling standpoint, and we're talking about spinners here, have to constantly evolve. You have to develop different deliveries. You have to develop the consistency of bowling in the block hole. And really a block hole ball, whether it's bowled at Andre Nokia's pace or Sunil Narayan's pace, it's still a block hole ball. You still cannot hit it for six. So it still has the same currency.
That noticeable change in the usage and also efficiency of spin.
Yeah, we've seen in the early stages of this season, obviously it's still early days, but we have seen more spinners being used at the death so far. Obviously, we need to take a little bit of a pinch of salt with some of the numbers. I think particularly if you look at the ones on screen now, it looks like it's an obvious choice when you see those numbers, but I think that's where occasionally these stats can be a little misleading, because if you think of the spinners who are delivering that 17% of overs, they're generally the best bowlers in the team. So, for example, I'm sure Tom at Sunrisers would have used Rashid Khan here and there as a death bowler. And obviously Rashid Khan bowling at the death is going to be a different thing to a sort of an uncapped Indian spinner at the death. But we have seen teams sort of use that gamble, I suppose, a little bit more this season. Particularly if you think to the weekend, there was a game between Rajasthan Royals and Gujarat Titans where you had Adam Zampa firing it into the block hole at the end for Rajasthan in the first innings, and then Gujarat gambling on Nur Ahmed, the impact player, and Afghan left-arm wrist spinner at the death and when they really needed a wicket in the final over. So it's been an interesting trend that's emerged, and I'll be interested, Tom, just to sort of hear your thoughts on, firstly, I suppose, why historically it's been such an unpopular strategy. It's something that's only happened where the best spinners have bowled it, and then secondly, sort of why it might be changing.
Well, I think it's been unpopular because more to do with the fact that it's unknown. The outcome's unknown. People have always felt that the slower you bowl, the easier it is to hit. But something that's worth bearing in mind, particularly with night games, you speak to any batsman, reading spin under lights is very difficult. So everyone says, well, I don't understand why he's not picking the wrong one or not picking the dooser or whatever it might be. But the actual reading of the delivery, if you're not picking it out of the wrist, which is the first option a batsman will take, you then are trying to pick it out of the air. But under lights with the white ball is near on impossible. So that's why it's a challenge for a lot of batters, whether it be early in the innings or later in the innings, and even harder later in the innings because the ball's got older. So therefore there's not a clear definition between the seam and the plain, clean white leather of a new Kookaburra ball. So it's got a little bit sort of dirty and scuffed up, so therefore it's even more challenging for the batters. So they're not sure which way it's going, and generally when you're taking on a spinner, you want to be hitting with the spin. Coming into you as a right-hander, you're more often than not going to target straight around to square leg, and vice versa. If it's spinning away, you're much better off hitting over mid-off and around to extra cover.
So, well, that's the challenge for the batter. The challenge for the spinner, of course, becomes, especially when we talk about evening games, in particular the second innings of evening games, dew comes in. That, as we all know, makes it tough for spinners. So when you as a coach are handing a spinner this responsibility, what are the attributes you're looking for in him?
Someone that's got control. Generally, wrist spinners find it difficult, a lot harder when it comes to bowling with dew, because the art of bowling out of the back of the hand against bowling out of the front like a finger spinner would do is a lot harder to control, even with a dry ball, let alone a ball where the seam has got a little bit of dampness. I think we also need to understand, so far in the IPL, the dew factor hasn't been a major issue. We haven't sort of seen, people brush their hand over the surface of an outfield and show their hand and it's dripping wet. We haven't quite got to that point. That's when it does become a nightmare. But generally, players this day and age will generally practice with a wet ball, so they're a little bit familiar with it. And it's more about control than anything else against turn. When the ball is a bit damp and you do have dew conditions, you're really looking at a bowler that's got an ability to be able to control length more than worrying about turning the ball.
Right, so that is spin, which we hope continues to play a bigger part. As Tom and Matt rightly mentioned, there was a time 15 years ago you thought you'd see no spin. Here they are. So far, early part of this season, almost 20% overs at the death being bowled by spin. Will that increase? Will it not? We'll continue to map those trends for you right here on T20 Time out throughout this IPL. But now let's put our attention onto the game today. It's Sunrisers Hyderabad against Mumbai Indians. Both teams locked on 4 points in 4 games. The news from the toss is that Sunrisers Hyderabad have won the toss and they will field. And while we'll bring the 11s up to you shortly, but I can tell both you gentlemen that there is an element of surprise. Umran Malik does not feature in Hyderabad starting 11. Tom, that comes as a surprise.
Yeah, it certainly does, because they're bowling first, aren't they?
Yes, they
are. And that really does surprise me. But then again, half of me, it doesn't surprise me because I know the challenges of trying to, have some consistency with selection in that environment, if I can put it that way. So I think it's a great shame that he's not playing. If you've got a bowler that bowls 150 kilometres an hour, I would have thought he's a reasonably good asset to have in your squad, particularly when you've got the flexibility of an impact player. So to me, that's a massive blow. And just looking at that team, when it came up briefly, it appeared that Washington Sundar has come in for him. So they're obviously feeling that Washington's off spin is going to be of greater value than Umran Malik's genuine pace. Matt, I'm not sure what you think, but I would have thought that that's a brave decision.
Yeah, I suppose it'll be interesting to see what the pitch does, how that behaves. Just given the context and picking the extra spinner, maybe they expect it's going to turn, and maybe there's a thought of potentially matchups and having an off spinner in there who can take the ball away from Mumbai's left-handers. I suppose Ishan Kishan and Tilak Verma, and probably be two of the top three in all likelihood. So maybe that's played into it. But yeah, I'm like Tom, pretty surprised not to see him run in there. Obviously, he's probably not had the easiest start to the IPL, but I think if you sort of look at how that's actually played out, he had one extremely expensive over in the last game, bowling in the power play when the team had to go very hard. And other than that, he's been asked to fulfill a particular role, which is to bang the ball in halfway down at high pace. And it is a surprise.
Yeah, because as that squad list confirms, it does not look like it can be a fitness issue, because you do see his name on the impact bench. It's a different matter that you're bowling first, so it's unlikely to come in at all. Tom, having spent time with Umran Malik, this can be shaky for any player's confidence, especially a young player. As much as the start has been tough, you'd want to persist, given everything we saw in 2022.
Yeah, I think it's a massive blow, assuming that he's not going to be used as an impact player. And the only way that can happen is if someone like Washington bowls 2-3 overs, in the first 8 overs of the match, and then he comes in and then takes over and bowls at in the last 12 overs of the game, for instance. But getting more to the point of your question, decisions like that create an impact on the player personally from a confidence point of view, but also the wider group, because people will be sitting there thinking, well, gosh, okay, well, he was playing for India only a few weeks ago. If he's losing his spot in a heartbeat, what's going to happen to me? So suddenly my innings tonight, or my bowling performance tonight, is even more important on making sure that I get out of this game okay personally, because I want to still be in the playing 11. So you then can create an environment where it becomes very self-centred around what you require personally against what we require as a team. So that's potentially the downside of that unpredictability around selection.
So pretty interesting and surprising to most of us what Sunrisers appear to have done with their initial mix. They have gone spin heavy, as many as 4 spin options if you consider Abhishek Sharma and Aiden Markram, who can both bowl along with Mayank Markande and Washington Sundar. But before we move on to Mumbai, just a quick point. This makes Marco Janssen's role, perhaps, Matt, beginning with you, even more important, because he has been their standout bowler in the power play. Bhuvneshwar Kumar and Natarajan's season so far doesn't appear to have kicked off.
Yeah, obviously Janssen, nice potentially playing against his twin brother as well tonight, which I think is a first in IPL history. I think they're the first pair of twins to be involved, let alone play against one another. But yeah, I think he's been pretty impressive this year so far. Obviously early days, only bowled 5 overs in the tournament, but I think particularly if they're going to go with a slightly different balance, where they have one fewer seam option, maybe we'll see him used in the middle phase, for example. But I do think that's an option, actually, what Tom said. We've seen Sunrisers be maybe a tiny bit funkier with their impact sub than some teams this year. And I think their second game, they had the option of bringing 3 different overseas players off the bench, and we weren't really sure which way they were going to go there. So I think it is an outside possibility, maybe, that they have someone who bowls 3 power play overs and then bring Umran off the bench, thinking that he's probably not going to bowl in the power play. But it'd be very interesting to see how it plays out over the course of the season.
Tom, quick word on that Sunrisers bowling mix, especially the pace mix, given what we know of Mumbai's batting potency. How do you see them split in this innings?
How they're looking to split their bowling options? Yeah. Well, I think if they're playing Washington, which they are, I would imagine he's got to bowl in the power play. So he's bowling at least 1, if not 2 overs in the power play. Bhuvneshwar Kumar is clearly going to bowl in the power play, because he's got as good a record as anyone with a new ball. And Marco Janssen has also got a good record with the new ball. So there's a bit of a logjam there with regards to the options when the ball is new, because there's only a window of, generally about 3 overs where the ball will swing, and then it sort of stops swinging, and suddenly it becomes, a lot easier for your top order players to get through the line. So I suppose from Sunrisers' point of view, is it's going to be interesting to see how Natarajan's form goes, because he's been slightly off with his form, and he's normally pretty consistent when it comes to his role in that side, being more of a specialist at the back end of the innings. But they've got many options. Mankandi has been a revelation. He's bowled beautifully. He's kept out Adil Rashid, so it's given them flexibility around their wrist spin option. So he's been a real find for the Sunrisers to give them the balance around their overseas players. And I suppose the other surprising one about Washington coming back into the side is Markram is hugely underrated in IPL cricket with regards to his off spin. He's an international off spinner. He is a batsman that bowls off spin for South Africa, and he does it in all phases of the game.
Right, so that's Sunrisers mix. Let's get you Mumbai's lineup. And unfortunately for us, Matt, they've deprived us of that twin versus twin face-off, because there are a few changes. Rohit Sharma, of course, was on the impact bench in their previous outing. He does make the full 11 this time. Jason Behrendorff is in. He returns in place of Riley Meredith. Arjun Tendulkar retains his spot, but the other debutant, that was Duan Janssen, has gone out. This is, of course, Mumbai's batting 11. And they have gone with the 3 overseas. So there will be the option of getting a Meredith in later when they defend their total. What do you make of that, Matt?
Yeah, it's interesting to see Behrendorff come back, particularly in the same team as Tendulkar, given that you would imagine they would perform pretty similar roles. Left arm seam with a new ball, operating at sort of lowish 130s, looking to swing it rather than beat anyone with pace necessarily. Be interesting to see exactly how they shape up that batting lineup as well. Tim David gave a press conference at the end of last week where he spoke about the importance of flexibility in their middle order, which I think there's an argument on both sides between it being useful to have a role in the side, so know that you come in the middle overs, say, or know that you're the next left-hander in when the left-handed batter before you is out, or something like that, versus having the sort of stability and security of a batting position. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out, and particularly with someone like Cameron Green, I think, who obviously started the season at number 3, has sort of moved down to become a finisher in their 2 wins. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see exactly how he's used over the course of the season, and because it looks like a pretty devastating Mumbai batting lineup when everything clicks. But the question is, will it click regularly enough to cope with what looks like one of the weaker bowling attacks in the league, you'd say?
On the bowling front, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to just add, I think they've been quite smart here by naming the 3 overseas players. We talked about with the Sunrisers and potential exchange of players in the middle of a bowling performance, but what you'll see them do is use Behrendorff in the first 10 and then sub him out for Meredith. So they've effectively got 2 overseas fast bowlers at their disposal. As an option. I would have thought that's the route they'll go.
And between that and the seasoned Piyush Chawla, who's been by far their best bowler so far, you do get that option of covering up for that inexperience, isn't it, Tom, which we've spoken about. Most Mumbai lineups that have been fielded so far, especially the last one, there was inexperience all around, barring that man on the screen, Piyush Chawla, who was still around in 2008 under your coaching at Punjab.
He was a baby-faced leg spinner then as well. And nothing's changed. He's looking as fit as a fiddle, and he's doing well, clearly, for Mumbai. So he's been a real bonus for them, because he was a late pick in the auction for them, and filling clearly a gap that they had with regards to a quality spinner or a spinner of experience. But they'll be leaning on him for sure. Particularly with Sunrisers that do sort of stack up with a lot of right-handers, so his 4 overs will be valuable.
And that, in particular, Chawla and whoever else fills the spin complement for Mumbai will be key when it comes to addressing the big form man in the Sunrisers batting lineup, because Harry Brook lit it up, but as we realized when we dive deeper into the numbers of that innings, Matt, it still involved Brook being wary of how he goes against spin.
Yeah, I think we need to be a little bit wary in terms of potentially, I think there's obviously been talk in this innings about Brook sort of having a potential weakness against spin. I think when you look at those numbers, obviously he's not scored anywhere near as quick as he did against pace. But if you look into it, he didn't face very many dot balls at all, and was actually pretty good at taking ones to get his partner back on strike, which was either Markram or Abhishek Sharma against spin. Both of whom are very strong players of spin. So it seemed like quite an effective situation there, where he was knocking ones, and I think it's always nice in a T20 batting lineup where you have those complementary pairs, where you have one player with a certain strength, so Brooks against pace versus Markram's against spin, because it makes life very difficult for the opposition captain.
And that's exactly what we can see, Tom, in those numbers, in those two big partnerships. Even as Brook made that century, he was surrounded by batters who are generally much stronger against spin. Rahul Tripathi got out early. He too is someone who's known for his attacking of spin. So in that sense, Sunrisers, even if we assume that Harry Brook has an issue against spin in this initial stage, they are set up smartly in that sense, because all the others around him are offering that sort of complementary partnership that Matt alludes to.
Well, there's two things I'd like to comment on. Firstly is you'd be a brave person to say Harry Brook has got a weakness against spin. We're looking at a very small sample size here. I've also seen him destroy spin. So let's just park that for a few weeks, and then we'll analyse whether Brook can play spin or not. And the second point I'd like to make is, to me, that shows incredibly good batsmanship. That shows someone that understands his game and understands the game that's being played out at that moment, and recognising that, right, okay, I've got, whether it be Markram or whether it be Abhishek Sharma that is running hot against spin, I'm just going to knock it into space here and get him on strike. That's exactly what you want from a team perspective, is understanding, who needs to be on strike at what time to maximise the team's outcome.
And if there's one other guy actually in the Sunrisers team who might have a potential weakness against spin that we've seen play out over a number of years, you'd probably say it's Mayank Agarwal, who's obviously his opening partner. So that will be an interesting one to watch, whether Mumbai go to spin early, because I suppose neither of their spinners, Shokeen or Chawla, would you say, is necessarily a power play bowler, but it might just be an option tonight where they might get one over of Chawla in and test those two guys against leg spin early on.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as far as Mayank Agarwal goes, the issues for the last couple of IPLs has not just been spin, it's been more all-round. We'll look ahead to that when we come back before the start of Sunrisers innings. For the moment, play all set to get underway, so let's get predictions in. Tom, you first. How much are Mumbai finishing at?
Well, they clearly, this is their strong suit, is their batting, and going by the runs that have been scored at Hyderabad in previous outings, I think it's going to be 183.
A touch higher at 190, I think.
Okay, so not a lot to choose between the two of you. 183 says Tom, 190 Matt. We'll see who is closer to it. Matt's also been going around doing interviews. A great feature with Moeen Ali that he put up, which you can read on our site. For that, download the app. The ESPNcricinfo app is where you can find not just that, but all our interviews, all the features, analysis coming in from the IPL as well as the rest of the cricket world. Be sure to stay up to date with the game till we see you next. We'll be back at the end of this Mumbai Indians innings on T20 Timeout. Thank you for your time.